There's a lot for you to know and very little time to explain.
Uncle Felix!
First of which is, I'm not your uncle.
There are movies that age gracefully. And then there's Spy Kids, a movie where a man turns himself into a virtual TV host. Children fight mutants from people.
How do you work this thing?
George Clooney appears for 5 seconds.
I wasn't talking to you. Me?
And somehow, this was marketed to kids. And the weirdest part is, it actually works. Because rewatching Spy Kids now as an adult feels less like revisiting a childhood classic and more like uncovering evidence that the early 2000s had absolutely no supervision. This movie is colorful, it's chaotic, and it's weirdly emotional. And somehow it manages to combine James Bond, low-budget sci-fi horror, family therapy, and PS2 cutscene energy into one of the most unforgettable kids movies ever made. But here's the thing nobody really talks about. Spy Kids wasn't just random nonsense. Underneath all the bizarre CGI and thumbs, there's actually a surprisingly creative movie hiding in plain sight. So today we are diving into the strange brilliance of Spy Kids and why this movie genuinely feels like a fever dream.
That's cool.
To understand Spy Kids, you have to understand the era that it came from. The early 2000s were a lawless wasteland for children's entertainment. Studios were just throwing ideas at the wall. Weird CGI, slime, gross out humor, random gadgets, bizarre character designs,
"'Tis a mark of the house elves enslaved."
And somehow every movie looked like it was made inside of a lava lamp. And then in 2001, director Robert Rodriguez said, what if you made a James Bond movie, but for children? And instead of making a safe, generic kids movie, he instead created this. Even the visuals feel like they were generated from a child describing a dream after eating too much sugar. Nothing in Spy Kids feels normal. The architecture, the gadgets, dialogue, and the villains are all weird. Even the camera angles feel slightly unhinged. And honestly, this is why the movie is very memorable, because modern movies are often terrified of being strange. But Spy Kids, it embraces this weirdness.
It's good to be back, Alex.
We need to talk about the thumbs, because whoever designed these things need to explain themselves. These creatures are literally giant thumbs with smaller thumbs as the limbs. That's it. That's the design. And somehow they became one of the most iconic movie creatures of the 2000s. As a kid, you accepted it. As an adult, you stare at the screen wondering if everyone involved was keep the pride. But this is what makes Spy Kids special. The movie commits completely to its insanity. There's no irony, there's no self-awareness, no wink-wink Marvel-style joke. The film genuinely believes some thumbs are intimidating. And honestly, that confidence makes it work. Because kids movies become legendary when they fully commit to the bit. And Spy Kids commits harder than almost any movie I've ever seen. Now let's talk about the most bizarre man in cinematic history, Floop.
With your reputations, I was expecting something a little more impressive.
As a kid, Floop just seemed like a weird cartoon villain, but rewatching the movie now, this man is basically an exhausted content creator. Hear me out. Floop is trapped performing for an audience. He constantly creates bizarre entertainment. He's surrounded by technology, and he slowly realizes that the machine he built is destroying him. Spy Kids accidentally predicted influencer burnout. That is insane. And Alan Cumming plays him like a man halfway between Willy Wonka, a childhood TV host, and someone having a nervous breakdown. Every scene with Floop feels like an hallucination, and somehow he ends up becoming one of the most memorable parts of the movie. Also,
Floop is a madman, help us, save us! Floop is a madman, help us, save us!
iconic, absolute cinema. Here's the crazy part. Underneath all the chaos, Spy Kids is actually built on a surprisingly solid foundation. At its core, it's about family. The parents aren't useless, the kids aren't annoying, and the story actually treats them like a real team. That alone separates Spy Kids from a lot of family movies. Carmen and Juni feels believable as siblings because they argue a lot, they annoy each other, but they still care about each other. And the movie understands something very important. Kids don't want to feel talked down to. Spy Kids let the children feel capable. The kids save the adults, they solve the problems, they become heroes. That's empowering when you're young. And honestly, that's why the movie connected with so many people. Because underneath all the madness, there's genuine sincerity. Spy Kids isn't cynical, it's imaginative. And that energy carries the entire movie. Now yes, the CGI in Spy Kids has aged like someone left yogurt in the sun. Some of these effects look like PlayStation 2 cutscenes, unfinished green screen tests, or deleted scenes from a theme park ride. But weirdly, the bad CGI almost makes the movie more charming because it gives Spy Kids this surreal dreamlike quality. Everything feels artificial, exaggerated, and slightly off, which honestly matches the tone perfectly. Modern movies often chase realism, but Spy Kids chases imagination. And imagination ages better than realism sometimes, because even if the effects look ridiculous, the creativity still shines through. This will make you remember things like the gadgets, the creatures, the giant castles, and the absurd inventions. Not because they looked real, but because they were memorable. And this is probably the biggest reason why the movie feels so special now. A studio would never greenlight this today. A movie executive will look at Spy Kids and immediately say, make it more realistic. Tone down the weirdness, mark the jokes every 10 seconds, and make the visuals safer. But the weirdness is the identity. Spy Kids feel uncomfortable. It feels like one filmmaker dumping every bizarre idea from his brain directly onto the screen. And honestly, movies need more of that energy again. Not every family movie needs to feel sanitized and algorithm approved. Sometimes you need thumbs, and sometimes you need some chaos. And sometimes you need a movie that feels like a child describing a dream at 3 AM. That's how cult classics are born. So yes, Spy Kids absolutely feel like a fever dream, but underneath all the weird CGI, the chaotic ending, the thumbs, and whatever was happening with Floop, there's actually a genuinely creative movie. It's weird, it's messy, and it's completely insane.
You're not that strong, Juni.
And that's exactly why people still remember it over 20 years.
Juni, it's all over.
Because you can forget a generic movie, but you can never forget Spy Kids. Now if you excuse me, I'm going to spend the next several hours wondering who approved the thumbs, and honestly I respect them for it.